Hello chess friends and welcome to Zalov Chess channel and welcome back to the World Rapid Chess Championship in 2021. So really wild things happened in the day 3. I'm sorry I couldn't cover many games today because I had to work my regular work. Now I came back and what I saw when I came back from work was really wild. Magnus Carlsen, the world champion of all 3 time formats, so the Rapid Chess, Classical Time Format Chess and the Blitz Chess, only finished on the 3rd place. So Jan Nepomniachtchi and Nodirbek Abdusattorov finished. Jan Nepomniachtchi finished on the 2nd place and Nodirbek Abdusattorov finished on the 1st place. Although Magnus Carlsen, Jan Nepomniachtchi and also Nodirbek Abdusattorov had the equal point count, the problem was that Magnus Carlsen finished on the 3rd place due to some tie breaks, and that was a huge problem in the tournament because only the 2 best players are moving up to the finals. And Magnus Carlsen later in the interview said that he hated this rule. He called this rule idiotic. In my opinion, it's really an idiotic rule, because if you want to play only about tie breaks, then everyone should be included in the tie breaks. So also Fabiano Caruana had the same point count like Magnus Carlsen, Nodirbek Abdusattorov and also Jan Nepomniachtchi. So either you take away the tie breaks or you include the tie breaks. You cannot go in between and say just only the best 2 players are playing the tie breaks. But okay, the rules were familiar to all of the players before this super event, so that's why no one should cry. These were simply the rules, and the rules were like that. So that's why Nodirbek Abdusattorov and Jan Nepomniachtchi played now the super final. And we're now in the game 2. The first game ended in a draw in which Nodirbek Abdusattorov had black pieces. So it meant now, if Nodirbek wins now the game against Jan Nepomniachtchi, it means now that Nodirbek Abdusattorov will be the world rapid chess champion in the world, which is really wild. We have to say Nodirbek Abdusattorov is only 70 years old. Be prepared, this was really wild game. Let's check out now what happened. So here Nodirbek opened with the move c4, and here he already played this opening also against Magnus Carlsen, which he won. We'll come to that point also in the later stage of our coverage. I'll cover also some great games, the best games from this tournament, and also the most important moments of this tournament. But now let's check out now first what happened in the finals. So as I said, c4 here played by Nodirbek. We have now knight to f6 by Jan Nepomniachtchi. We have now knight to c3. We have the English opening, and now after move e5 we have now sort of a reverse Sicilian. And here knight to f3. We have now knight to c6 here by Jan Nepomniachtchi, and now e4. This is now the 4-knight system. We have to say Nodirbek has a great control of the center of the square d5, but in long terms, you see, even if you place your knight on d5, this knight on d5 as a long-term plan is not working, because in the later stage of the game still black has the opportunity to kick away this potential outposted knight on d5. On the other hand, if for instance black cemented the knight on d4, it means now that in one particular moment you cannot kick away anymore the knight from d4. So with the move c4 and e4, you have of course a great space control in the center, but you're leaving also a little bit your side of the board unprotected. You see the d4 square can be a long-term weakness. So here in the continuation, bishop to b4 played by Jan Nepomniachtchi. We have now d3 by Nodirbek. We have now d6 and now h3, preventing some positional trades of pieces, because after bishop to g4, maybe let's see what happens if you play maybe something else. Let's see bishop to e3, then play bishop to g4, and now after h3 I think we can expect bishop to f3. You see queen to f3, and now white is left a little bit with a bad bishop here, which is simply blocked out by its own pawn structure. So that's why many times when you put such a pawn chain like this, you will have problems maybe to develop your light square bishop. So that's why h3, very important move here by Nodirbek Abdusattorov. So here Nepo played a5, fixing the pawn structure on the queen side, creating really nice blockade, because we can expect also some a3 b4 ideas of whites, then also b5. So that's why a5 is paralyzing a little bit the queen side, but in the long run we're expecting, as we said, the outpost here, knight to d4, maybe even bishop to c5, in order to support here a central grip by black around that square. So here in the continuation we have bishop to e2 by Nodirbek. We have bishop to c5 by Jan Nepomniachtchi, and now castling played by Nodirbek, and now h6. H6 is again A similar idea like Nodirbek played, bishop to g5 can be very annoying, followed with knight to d5. Then you have this very nice tension. The bishop is a little bit out of game because you cannot get the bishop in order to defend the knight. The bishop on c5 is very active, but sometimes you need also your bishop in order to defend yourself. But here in the continuation, Nepo played a great prophylactic move, also the move h6. So we have now bishop to e3. This is now the first great decision, I think, by Nodirbek, because he sends now after bishop to e3, f takes e3. The knights are taking over here in the game, and how to play in the best way against the knight. The best way to play against the knight is to restrict the knights, and I think we now with the move f takes e3, you see you have taken very important squares here for the knight. As we said in the beginning, the d4 was a long-term weakness here for white, so that's why Nodirbek Abdusattorov, with his positional trades of pieces, managed to somehow battle with his ideas of black. So that's why very important trades of bishops, and you see now we have taken over here from white's perspective the control of the f4 square, but also of the d4 square, and we're opening now also the very important f file. Here in the continuation we have now castling by Jan Nepomniachtchi, queen to e1, a very important move also to get the queen into the game. Now with knight to h4, knight to f5, this could be very dangerous here also for black. So far great moves here by the young prodigy, by the young Uzbek prodigy Nodirbek Abdusattorov. Here after move queen to e1, we have now knight to e7. Here Nepo sensed that he could maybe have problems around his king, so that's why he included more defenders. Here he's trying now to get the knight on g6. We have now knight to h4, knight to g6, and okay, you could maybe play knight takes g6, but after f takes g6, basically similar structure happened with the move f takes g6. Black is also taking the very important f5 square, so there's no way maybe for white to find some maneuvers and include the knight somehow into the game. A potential knight to d5 is simply not working, because after knight takes d5, you see c takes d5 or e takes d5. What happens doesn't matter. I think in this particular scenario, black's light square bishop is slightly better, because you see with so many pawns on light squares, when we count here the light square pawns, it's simply, I think, too much of a pawn chain, and you see the white light square bishop would be again simply blocked out by its own pawn structure. So that's why this kind of a trade doesn't work here for white. White has to go into the game with more pieces on the board, so that's why here knight to f5. We have now c6 by Nepomniachtchi. He's taking now this very important square. As we said, a long-term plan also by white was the outpost here around the square d5. So we have now queen to g3, we have now bishop to f5. Here Nepo didn't want to tolerate this knight on this very important square. We have now rook to f5 and now knight to h7. This is a good choice by Nepo, because I think we can expect, let's play a couple of bad moves here for Nepo. Here maybe you can play something like rook to c8 or similar stuff. But now I think with the move rook to f1, this is now the main issue. You can expect, I think, in the near future maybe a rook sacrifice on f6, and when that happens, then I think the whole defense is falling apart. Maybe not immediately, maybe after potential rook to f6 immediately this position is defendable for black, but as a long-term plan, as a long-term tactic, I think the move rook to f6 would be very dangerous, and I think Jan Nepomniachtchi would always have in mind this potential tactic. So that's why he didn't allow this idea. He played immediately knight to h7, getting out of this potential exchange sacrifice, which was, I think, so far a great idea also by Nepo. So we have now rook from a to f1. You see how Nodirbek Abdusattorov is building a powerful attack. All of the pieces are playing in beautiful harmony, but if this game goes into an endgame, if many pieces are traded off, if you could just imagine this position without the knights, without the rooks, even without the queens on the board, then black is slightly better because of the much healthier pawn structure. So Nodirbek has to make something out of his piece activity. If he doesn't make anything out of his piece activity, then the game is simply over. So that's why he has to be here on the attacking side. So we have now queen to h4, we have now king to h2, which was, I think, again a great choice. You can play queen to f3, but again with knight to g5 the queen gets kicked away, so nothing wrong also with this idea. But here Nodirbek found a great way how to at least include his king into the game, because there is no way to prevent anymore the trades of queens, which are favorable, I think, for black. We have said if this game reaches the endgame stage, then black is simply much better because of the much healthier pawn structure. So now Nepo goes into these ideas and trying to trade off more pieces. So after move king to h2, queen takes g3, king takes g3, knight to e7, and now rook to f2. We have knight to g5, now h4. Very nice move, kicking away the knight, and now knight to e6. And here Nepo is searching for new opportunities how to get back into the game with the knight, but the best way to play against the knight is simply to restrict the knight's ability to come into the game. So that's why even a potential knight to c5 is not working, because you get simply d4. You're basically improving your opponent's position. So there's simply not a good way how to get the knights into the game, because these 4 pawns are holding simply both of these knights. These 4 pawns are simply kicking away and pushing away this knight of Jan Nepomniachtchi. So here in the continuation, bishop to g4, we have now knight to c7. As we said, knight to c5 not working, you get simply d4, and the position, I think, is falling apart. So here after move bishop to g4, knight to c7, knight to a4, we have now f6, and now a beautiful move here by Nodirbek Abdusattorov, d4. If you play e takes d4, you see e takes d4, then the pawn structure is improved. The bishop is active on g4, the knight is active on a4, the rook battery is very powerful. So that's why here there is not a good way to trade off more pawns here in the center for black. Black has to go here more positional into the game. Here rook from f to d8, and now Nodirbek smelled some block. This was now a huge mistake here by Jan Nepomniachtchi. E takes d4, we have said, would be probably slightly necklace, but there are maybe different opportunities. Maybe you can play knight to g6. If white wants to take, then maybe you can include the knight here and centralize the knight further. So that's why here you don't have to touch anything in the center, because white doesn't want to also this position to get blocked out. If the center gets blocked out, then the knights are much better in the potential blocked out position. So after move knight to g6, here the problem is now Nepo played rook to d8, and now the actual fun starts, because here Nodirbek Abdusattorov smelled some blood. He realized that there are many tactical possibilities on the d file. He played rook to d2. Again, if you want to take e takes d4, then e takes d4, and again we have this improved pawn structure. Or you can even take, I think in this particular scenario, with the rook to d4, then rook from f to d1, and you see now suddenly the pawn on d6 is a huge weakness, and there is not a good way even to defend it. You cannot improve here with d5, because this is a great control so far by this e4 pawn and the c4 pawn. So you see something went wrong here for Nepo. After move rook to d2, here we have b5, we have a takes b5, knight to b5, but now rook to c1, which again maybe wasn't the best of moves. Maybe here simply here after move knight to b5, we can play d takes e5, and after f takes e5, simply double up here. The rooks would be also perfect, yeah, but also knight to b6 is working, and then followed with knight to c4. This was a tactic that Nodirbek Abdusattorov unfortunately missed. Knight to c4 would be a brilliant idea. Then it could simply this other rook into the game, and I'm not seeing a good way how Nepo can defend this position. So after this move, knight to b5, here Nodirbek played rook to c1, which still is a decent position for white, but as we said, there were better moves. Knight to b6 would be a brilliant move, I think. In that particular position, it would be such a bad position for Jan Nepomniachtchi. So we have now rook from a to b8, we have knight to c3, king to f7, and now h5. This move is paralyzing now the whole king side. Here nothing can happen on the king side. Nodirbek is sensing that he's much better here in the center of the board. He's better on the queen side, although you don't have to play. Again, you can maybe play this move d takes e5. After d takes e5, you can simply double up rooks here and go maybe into favorable endgame. But okay, sorry, where we stopped. So let's go back to the moment. Sorry, I misclicked here. So after move knight to c3, we have said the last move was h5, paralyzing the king side. We have now knight to c3, rook to c3. Look how Nodirbek is playing the game. He's very active with both of these rooks, and now rook to b5. We have now bishop to e2, attacking the rook to b6. Again, there was a better move here for Jan Nepomniachtchi. Instead of this move rook to b6, you can actually play e takes d4, because It comes, of course, also with the counter attack against the rook on c3. Now white is pretty much forced to take. Now you can escape, but you can use this moment. You can play rook to g5 in order to create a very important check, which gives you a little bit time to breathe. After move king to f2, you can escape now, and I think again this will be a playable position. Although you have still this weakness on c6, but now in the long term, maybe you can also try to expand here with a4, then a3. Also is a very nice idea. A rook to b1 is also a very important idea, still staying on the b file, because we have to notice, I think, that the b2 pawn is a long-term weakness also here for white. So that's why many opportunities for both sides, but for instance the engine gives here equal chances for white and also for black. So rook to b6, unfortunately not the best of moves, because here after move bishop to c4, the bishop comes very active into the game, and I think this move e takes d4 was really hard to find here for Jan Nepomniachtchi. Now here in the continuation we have now the move d5, but now Nodirbek Abdusattorov found a beautiful tactic. He simply plays here d takes e5, and you see now the problem here of the spin on the d file. So that's why here f takes e5. Now we have e takes d5, c takes d5, but now a beautiful move e4, and everything is pretty much so messed up here for black. You see we have this attack on this diagonal, we have this attack on this file, and suddenly Nodirbek Abdusattorov is winning a huge pawn. This is now beautiful pawn that he gained with the beautiful tactic, and from this point on it's basically a one-way ticket. And here Jan Nepomniachtchi is already in big trouble. So here after move e4, knight, king to f6, we have bishop to d5, knight to d5, e takes d5, after king to g5, here rook to e3. Very important move, counterattack here against this pawn on e5. We have rook, king to h5, rook to e5, and now after move king to g6. Now very important move d6. Simply continue the pressure, and now this pass pawn should probably win the game here for white. So after move d6, we have now here simply a4 by Jan Nepomniachtchi. He's trying probably to create some weaknesses by playing the move a3. Then he's probably creating this double pawn structure. Then these pawns are very easy to attack, but still this is a pass pawn that's very hard to break, because the problem of this position is that this rook is cutting off the potential king's ability to play. So the king cannot be included into the defense, and even if you manage to grab somehow maybe this pawn, then you have to trade off more pieces, and then you see white can also create here a distant pass pawn. So very hard endgame now to play for Jan Nepomniachtchi. Nodirbek Abdusattorov tried now the move d7. We have king to f7 here by Jan Nepomniachtchi. He's trying to get his king into the game. Rook to f2, kicking away the king. The king had to step back. We have now king to g6, and now a beautiful move here by Nodirbek Abdusattorov, rook to e7. So we can also now, from white's perspective, play something like rook to f7 and double up the rooks on the 7th rank. When you manage to do that, then it's simply game over here for black. So here in the continuation we have rook to d6. Now comes this idea, rook to f7. We have now a check, but it doesn't bring anything. Here king to f4, we have rook to rook to b8, and now of course rook to g7, king to h5, we have king to f5, rook takes b2, and now a beautiful move, which is now of course a preparation to get the promotion. Here in the continuation, here you have to play rook from b to d2, or you can play maybe rook to f2, but it doesn't bring you so much. You are creating some checks, but then afterwards you have to step back again and play to d2. This is now too powerful pawn, and now after potential rook to g7, again white is simply defending this position. Now in the near future we can expect this king to march on here, and again it's completely winning endgame here for white. So here in the continuation, after move rook to g8, so as we said, rook to d2 was played, rook to e1. Here even if you take here the pawn, then of course it's not so good, because you get simply rook to h1 and it's checkmate. So that's why here Nodirbek Abdusattorov played a beautiful tactic here in the continuation. Instead of this move rook to d7, Jan Nepomniachtchi played now the move rook to d5. We have king to f6, we have king to rook to d6 again, and to check. We have king to f5, we have now some perpetuals, but now Nodirbek found a way how to escape with the king. No more checks are possible. We have now rook to d3, you have only one check, but now again it's simply game over. Again, if you try if you try here to take, then again we're trying some ideas. Rook to e5 is also simply winning the game, because you have to step back, and now after rook to e4 we're finding simply a way. Here you have to step back again, and now rook to e5, and now g3. G3 is simply winning the game. You have to give up your rook, and now after rook to g3 it's simply game over. So here after move rook to e1, as we said, Nepo tried some perpetuals, but now when the king escaped, now here we had the promotion. The rook has to step back, and now comes this beautiful idea. Again, the same idea, rook to e5. We have now king to h4, and now after move g3 in this position, Nepo resigned. So, what to say? Nodirbek Abdusattorov is the winner of the World Rapid Chess Championship in 2021. Congratulations. I'm not sure what to say. Incredible performance by the young Uzbek grandmaster. This was a huge surprise, but it's a beautiful thing, I think, for us to see him winning the game. He won the game against Magnus Carlsen, which was, I think, a huge surprise. And now in the next couple of weeks, I think I'll do more videos about Nodirbek Abdusattorov. I think we have to know why he's so strong. I think we have to know why where he improved now recently in his era. So it was, I think, a beautiful tournament, and unfortunately for Magnus Carlsen fans, Magnus only finished on the 3rd place. In my opinion, it was a huge surprise, because I thought after the day 2 that really no one can catch up anymore with Magnus Carlsen, but in the day 3 Nodirbek really outplayed Magnus Carlsen, the world champion, with a beautiful tactic, and now he's the deserved winner of this beautiful and super event. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the tournament. I really enjoyed it a lot. This is how chess should be played. This is what I want to see in chess. Beautiful tactics, beautiful wild games. Really, we love to see this tension when they're playing the chess. We have seen many surprises. We have seen some improvements in particular games. We have seen, I think, many beautiful tacticians in this super event, and in the next couple of days I'll cover also the most beautiful games of the super event. But so far, let's congratulate here Nodirbek Abdusattorov for winning this very nice tournament. Okay, this is it for today. I'm putting my son now to sleep. As I said, this was a beautiful moment for me. I think this is how chess should be played. This is what we want to see out of chess. We have seen also in this world classical time format chess tournament that the games were simply too boring. There were simply no dynamics. In this tournament, I think we have witnessed one of the most beautiful events. At least it was one of my favorite events in chess that I've seen. So okay, this is it from me today. See you tomorrow with some new videos about this particular tournament. I hope you enjoyed my coverage so far, and I wish you all of the best. And what to say, chess is the best, of course.